call myself the COE of Brother, not the CEO. And what that means is the Chief Opportunity Engineer. Because I still see my job as being leading the charge as the most senior salesperson, marketeer, and leader in the company whose job it is to fire everybody up about how we can be successful as a business. So some of the things I'm sharing with you today are gained from over 20 years worth of kind of doing this. So on that journey, I will also confess to being a rocking chair for much of that. So what I mean by that is that I heard a term the other day which I really liked, and it was called flawsome. What that really means is actually you've got a lot of flaws, but what you've done on your way to being awesome, if someone describes you as that, is you've corrected those flaws along the way. So I think I'm sort of a little bit of an accidental CEO myself, and I sometimes look in the mirror and think, how on earth did I get here? And I think it's probably looking back because I've corrected a lot of mistakes that I've made. So I don't want you to relearn any of those mistakes. So I want to share with you some of the things that I think may help you along the way, particularly if you're trying to bridge over to the board or you're trying to bridge over to actually become a chief executive of a business. Cool. So kind of when you go to a networking event, yeah, suddenly, if I was at a networking event, probably in about 2003, when I was probably the sales director of the company, I'd see a C-suite in the room, and I'd be thinking, oh yeah, I know where I'm heading. I'm heading to that person. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually get right in their face, and I'm going to start working them. I'm going to start putting in a few of those body punches to see whether we can get one of our people through the door. And as you can probably imagine, as soon as they saw me coming, they were running for the coffee. They were running somewhere else other than a conversation with me. And this is kind of really where the networking dance doesn't work. So any of you that are sending your salespeople to networking events, you're probably not going to have an awful lot of success in terms of conversion. So I think to start today's sort of talk, I just want to define what a CEO actually is. And I just want to frame this in a quick story, right? So I got invited to this sort of young entrepreneurs networking event over in the city. And obviously I'm the wise owl in the room, aren't I? You know, everyone's sort of funky. No one's wearing any socks. Everyone's got their jeans rolled up. Kind of everyone's fist pumping, high-fiving. And I walk in the room as the old guy, you know. So I'm thinking, right, okay. So I get chatting to a young person. And they say to me, what do you do? I said, well, I'm sort of, I run Brother, right? Okay, well, what does Brother do? Well, we do this and we do that. That's fine. I said, what do you do? And the individual replied, I'll give it some dramatic effect because it was quite funny, I thought. I'm the chief executive, founder, managing director, and chief financial officer of my company. I went, wow, what a job that is. Crikey, how many people do you have? Tell me about the business. The business isn't off the ground yet. We're looking for founders. We're looking for investors. We're looking for money. I went, do you know what? I've got a tip for you. Stop introducing yourself like that. Because actually what you're doing is almost discrediting yourself and your idea by trying to describe yourself as a founder, chief executive, chairman, chief financial officer, and you don't really have a business, an idea, or a company. So this is what chief executives do above me. They are the lead person in the business, overseeing all of the company's operations. And actually what they are is they move away from specialisms to become world-class generalists. So they're really hovering about with a lot in their head a lot of the time. And they're not really a subject matter expert anymore. What they are is world-class generalists. So here's my first tip for you today. When you're thinking about trying to get through or break through to the C-suite or senior executives, I want you to think TAT a lot more often. Yeah, get in a meeting room, start thinking TAT. Now, that is an acronym which you've probably worked out for time, attention, and trust. That in order for you to demonstrate credibility when you're selling to senior executives, you've got to appreciate that they are not time poor, but they are time prioritized. That they are also, they give their attention to the things that they are interested in that moment or strategically is where the company is going or being orientated towards. And actually, if you don't have trust or permission to play, or you are not solving pain points which we have as a business, you will not create trust. So it's really, really simple. Think time, attention, and trust to be more successful. Because senior executives are very, very focused people. This is what they're wandering around within their heads most of the time. They're not actually thinking normally about your product and service. I haven't met a senior executive yet that is actually losing sleep at night over their printer fleet. So what we have to do is identify pain points of their sector or of their operation in order to make that discussion relevant. So now we've identified, okay, this is what chief executives are wandering around with in their daily lives. What about organizations? What about the companies that they're running? Because there's an awful lot of change happening the way that companies are actually configured. And so I want to introduce an idea to you about the idea of line of business is where decision-making is now happening. So the traditional pyramids of power where decision-making used to exist really are no longer existing. Decision-making is a lot more devolved. And we now know that there's roughly 5.4 people involved in pretty much every B2B decision that's taken. So we call this line of business and the people that are involved lobsters. And what we've got to do is actually figure out a way of putting down our lobster pots in an organization. So how do you put your pots out there in order that when those 5 people end up in a room talking about your product or service, there's a relevancy that they can all see a link between your brand and what they're discussing. So you have to touch a lot of people when you're involved in B2B selling in our own experience. So one thing that we do at Brother, for example, to try and make that happen is my entire senior leadership team, the directors of the company, in their appraisals have an objective to effectively ensure that they have peer-to-peer relationships in all our major customers. And the point is, it's about gluing yourself in to these major relationships, not only having a single strand of connection, but multiple strands of connection when you're dealing with B2B accounts. So I'd like to share with you a really simple 3-step process, which is the way that I view the world, which I think is a winning pattern that you could learn from, or you might observe or take one bit of it. So the first element of that, in my view, is as somebody that receives a huge amount of inbound marketing material every single day via digital means and other means, I'm really sad to say that 99% of it is absolute rubbish. That really hurts, doesn't it? 99% of it is absolute rubbish because it's overgeneralized. You're treating me as a senior executive like you would treat anybody, and what you're actually saying is we're being probably quite lazy here with our approach. So if you're to be more successful trying to break through to senior executives, you have got to behave like the CIA. And the word social has the letters CIA within it. So you've got to make sure that your people are researching the brands and the people that they're trying to target. You have got to gather investigative data. You've got to start to pull down the nuggets of intelligence that you could use. And of course, that means everything. That means about the industry vernacular. That means about research. Who are the key people? Where's the influences? Where's the decision-making? Where's the pain points? Have you read industry papers which are widely available, which talk about the things the industries are concerned about? And then once we've got that, what we also want to do is understand the individual who actually it is we're trying to target. And it really doesn't take, much rocket science to figure out by looking at someone on social media what their passions are, what their interests are, whether they tweet a lot about leadership, for example, whether they write posts on LinkedIn about CTOs or the CMO, the CIO battle, whatever that might be, all that sort of stuff. You've got to code all of that stuff, and you've got to start creating these profiles about individuals in order that you can create a really relevant approach. And of course, there's only one radio station that people want to hear in their lives, right? What's in it for me? So if you're just firing something through that just says, we're this, we're that, and I've got a fabulous example I hope I can show you in a moment, then to be honest with you, you're just going to kind of, yo, bye. You're just not going to have any time or attention, and you're certainly probably going to do yourself more harm. And do you know who are the worst at this? Media, advertising, creative, and digital agencies. They are the worst. And I sometimes look at this and think, hang on a minute, you're trying to sell us these services, and this is the way you approach us and show us your credibility with something like this? Man, you've got to kind of like it's the worst advert for yourself ever. And what happens is actually the salespeople are allowed to just go off and do their thing, where actually there should be a consolidated effort amongst the agency to ensure that what we've got to do is demonstrate our capability to this individual that we can do for them by approaching them in the way that they'd go, wow, that was absolutely brilliant. Who are these people? And that, sadly, does not happen. So there's our first one, is we've got to establish permission to play. And we establish permission to play our credibility by ensuring that the customer knows, the end product knows what it is that we've identified as the pain points relevant to their business, them as an individual, or to their sector, and we have permission to play as a brand to solve those. Don't overstate your permission to play with executives. If you can't do it, and you can't offer a case study on your product or service that you're trying to establish permission to play, don't overcook it. So make sure you are only presenting the things that you really have credibility. So we've talked about then the way we personalize. And this is absolutely key. When you make your approach, it really, really must be personal. You must demonstrate that we have put some hard yards in investigating your business in order that we can really offer credibility. And actually, we are jumping out. We're leaping out above everybody else that contacts you to say, actually, we know something that they do. And over the years, I've done a lot of personal development, CPD, in the armed forces, believe it or not. And one of the things I learned from one of their courses around leadership is the difference between information and intelligence. You know, information is things that everybody knows. Intelligence is the things that only you know that no one else knows. And I think brands and businesses that are trying to develop relationships with senior executives demonstrate the fact that they know things about you that nobody else knows through well-researched approaches. So let me show you a typical example of an email that would arrive at my desk and in my inbox. And it goes something like this. I'm reaching out to you. Oh no, please don't use the word reaching out when you're sending an email to a senior executive. As I understand, you're the person in charge of marketing at Brother. I was like 5 years ago, not now. So bye. We have won a list of awards. Really? How wonderful for you. How wonderful. How's that relevant to me? And we'd love to have a coffee with you. Oh, we'd love to have a coffee. Yeah, I know, like 500 or 1,000 people would love to have a coffee with me. Maybe it's probably better I hold a coffee morning, and I have 1,000 people in a room, and I just come and I'll drink a coffee, and everyone else can enjoy coffee. Okay? Senior executives don't do this stuff. Okay? This is kind of, agency talk. So kind of the other big mistake is we look forward to hearing about your availability, and they never follow it up. Seriously, you've got salespeople not following stuff up. Okay, just don't even do it. Don't even send it if you can't follow it up. So there's two things about that document that I just want to leave you with as thoughts. If you we all over the place, you will not be successful. That is, the more you use the word we in your outbound marketing, the less impact you will have and the higher propensity to reach the bin or the delete box. And we call that the we fee, not Wi-Fi, the we fee. So if I look at your outbound communication to me and I count the word we more than 3 times, I already know that you're probably not well researched. What you really want to talk about is you and your pain points, and your business, and how there's a relevancy to the things that you're offering that might help to solve those. So please, 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 avoid weeing all over the place. Avoid your marketing team taking that and thinking that it works. that chest beating about your products or services is going to impress somebody. Because generally speaking, in all the senior executives that I spend time with, it doesn't. And so finally, it's kind of, well, now we know all this stuff. What are we going to do? Now we've researched somebody, now we understand about them, now we've got all of this research. How are we going to approach that individual? And actually, you know, there are so many approaches you could take when trying to get through to a senior executive. You know, it's not just about, you know, we've had it all. You know, I've had somebody send a box this big with like 10 balloons in it. You open it up and you just go, you know, right, 10 balloons. What are we going to do with those now? Pop, 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 pop. Someone get rid of that box. You know, that's kind of not the way. Right? So sort of stunts, in my view, are not really the way to grab attention with senior people. But a whole list of things up here are good ways to meet senior people. And one of our most successful ways of late, actually, is we've been using video cards. So we buy those video cards, and what we then do is record personalized messages for that account on that video card. So we've researched, we've got industry vernacular, and one of the things also about relationships is do you know that the reason I appear on that video is that it creates 3 times more credibility for Jess, who's about to appear after me. So as the lead executive of the business, I'm more likely that that's going to get seen because they know it's the MD, the CEO of Brother, has recorded something which has arrived. So it's got some insta credibility. And then I'm passing that through to Jess, and I'm introducing Jess in order that then this second part of that video gets fully watched. Now, our conversion rates on these videos are insane. I won't tell you specifically, but what I can tell you is from a standing start of 0, we now have over half of our intended markets that we were targeting. The customers that exist within that market was 50 people in the customer subsegment. 25 are now successful business wins. And I mean through the door. Wins, written business. So it takes more time to do. Of course it does, right? I've got to take sales guys off the road. I've got to get a video crew in. We've got to get it all recorded. We've got to do all these introductions. You know, it's a couple of days worth of time and effort just to get like 10 of these out the door. But what really matters is the impact and the conversion. So rather than being busy rocking chair fools, generating masses of marketing, masses of outbound, what we're about is specificity. Who do we want to get to? What are they all about? And what do we want to tell them about what we do? And how do we establish our permission to play and our credibility? So this winning pattern that I think for selling to senior executives is in a little formula like this. This is a shortened version of it, which is actually you will create an impact and an outcome when you prepare, you personalize, and you choose the correct application in order to deliver your message. And all of that is diluted by the desire that you have to be successful and laziness. So if you do not step up and implement the top part of that winning pattern, then in my view, by definition, you will begin to potentially present yourself as lazy if you then start to send out lots of we-driven letters and we-driven marketing.